Welcome to the Author Connection. This is Jenny Hudson, your host, and today I have Dave Riese as our guest, the author of Echo from Mount Royale, and he is a winner of Merrimack Media's 2014 Outstanding Writers Contest, and this is his debut novel, and I'm very pleased to have him here with us today. So welcome, Dave.
For having me.
Yeah, glad to have you here. So I'll show everybody your book.
Oh yes, just got it the other day. Very exciting. And
Yeah.
you know, I look through it and I go, I wrote all these words.
Right.
How did I do it?
So on that note, what made you write all those words? What prompted you to write this book?
Well, I came down to my coffee group in where I used to work, and I just mentioned I was retiring, and they asked me, well, what do you want? What are you going to do when you retire? And I said, I want to write some short stories and maybe a novel. And this one woman that I'd known for several years said, well, I've got some stories about my childhood in Montreal. Let me tell you those. And so she told me a couple of stories, and they were very interesting. I wrote them up. She liked them. And then one day she said, well, I've really got something very dark to kind of tell you. She said, well, I don't know if I should tell you or not. And I said, well, come on. And so she, of course, wanted to. And she told me the story about her courtship when she was 18 years old in Montreal in 1951. And I was just so astounded by what happened to her and how it all worked out that I just couldn't forget it. And she said, well, you know, write it up if you want. And she thought it was going to be another short story. And I kept bringing in pages and pages, and she kept going, this isn't going to be a short story. I said, no, it's not. I thought it would be a novella, and before I knew it, it was 300 pages. It's probably about 5% her story, but she never demanded that I change anything. I just created this whole fictional substructure over it, created characters. I had her uh, doing things. As far as she was concerned, it was my book. It had really nothing to do with her except that basic little story, and so she uh, was a really great person to work with.
So it's fiction, but it's based on a true story.
Yes, right.
So now that we know where it came from, tell us about the story, for just briefly. I mean, don't give it away, but what do you think the story is about, and what is the takeaway of this book for people?
Well, I think the story is about a chance meeting that this young girl has with a wealthy, slightly older man who she starts a date and begins to feel a lot of um, love for him or sympathy or interest in him because there's something about him that makes her wonder, does he really like me? But yet he's always um, at me, you know, wanting to be with me. So basically, that's the gist of the story. The takeaway is really how your resilience in the face of obstacles and how you overcome really a life-changing event.
So Rebecca, who is the main character in your book, is surprisingly resilient, I think.
Right.
Do you think that this was something that you made up as you wrote it, or did you see this in the main character that you actually derived the story from?
Well, I think part of it was being in the writer's critique group. I got feedback, and people would say, don't make her sound like she's whining or, you know, that she's not taking control of her life. So that helped guide me, and I certainly had characteristics of her, like her sense of humor, her forgiveness, but her sort of sense of humor, her sharp comebacks, and just her odd way of looking at life. But I added to that her sense that she comes to feel that she is worth a lot, and she's going to be a success in life, and she's not going to let anything stand in the way.
So Rebecca is 18 when we meet her, and you're obviously, a middle-aged man in Boston, and she's a Jewish girl in Montreal in the 1950s. And you did an amazing job characterizing her. I think when anybody reads this book, they're not going to think that this is a man writing this book. So was that difficult for you to do, to get inside an 18-year-old's head?
Not too difficult, because I think all teenagers, whether you're men or women, have certain anxieties, certain hopes, certain fears. So I thought a little bit about when I was a teenager 50 years ago. And also I raised a daughter, and so I thought back to what kind of things she went through. But as I joke, I say, well, every day I put on my saddle shoes and wore my poodle dress, and I got right into her character. But I don't think I should say that too often, because I think people might start to believe me. But it was a matter of just getting into a zone where I had her characteristics, and I just made sure that everything that she did somehow built on those characteristics.
Well, I think there's something about the writing process that when you're into your story, I know for me when I write, I start seeing a movie, and you start seeing your characters do different things, and if you're sitting there in your poodle skirt, it's probably pretty easy to get there, right?
Well, it's
in character.
True. Characters will take off, and they'll start to do things that you never expected, and sometimes you have to go back and take that out, but other times it's just opens up all new doors. And that's another thing why I think the critique group is good, because people read it and they say, well, do you think such and such might happen? And suddenly you go, yeah, that would be great, and you go and have an idea that you can take off on. So
Yeah.
I don't know how people write a book without getting feedback from other writers, because I would find it impossible.
Actually, I don't know how people can write a book just from an outline, because sometimes your characters surprise you, and I think that, if your characters don't surprise you, they're not going to surprise anybody, right?
Right. And some writers say they have to have it all outlined, they have to know the exact ending before they can start to write. I just need a start, and you just keep writing, and really, the book is created when you do the editing. When you sit down and just write, all you're doing is just typing as fast as you can. You have mistakes and misspellings and everything, but it's when you sit down and start to edit that you go, okay, what is the direction? What is the primary purpose of this scene? How is it going to lead into that scene? And you have to worry about the arc of the character through the story, so that you don't have an up and down like that makes no sense.
That's right. And speaking of direction, what's for you next now that you've published your book?
Well, I've already started working on a story about parents towards the end of their lives. I went through both my parents' physical deterioration, mental deterioration, and it made me think about my own end that is coming up one of these days. But it also made me think back on experiences that I had with them and how I look at it differently now. And so what I'm doing is writing a fictional memoir, because I have to add some interesting bits that maybe didn't happen, just to sort of keep the interest up. But I really wanted to get the sense of a child or an elderly man looking at his parents and just trying to understand who they really are, what they came from, what made them the way they were, and give some forgiveness to them, because not everyone is, no one's perfect, and
Right.
you at some point feel, well, he wasn't really a good father. A lot of sons think their fathers weren't very great, but you come to a certain sense of understanding and forgiveness, and you realize that that person was very important to you. Unfortunately, a lot of times it happens towards the end, and sometimes it happens too late. But
That
that's what,
sounds really poignant. It sounds like a really good book.
yeah,
Yeah.
well, it's going to take a while to write, but uh, just keep working at it. I mean, this
That's
took 2.5 years. I don't think this other one will take as long, because now that I'm into, really, my job is now writing. So I think I'm picking up speed, and I'm doing it more efficiently uh, than I did before. So I hope there are a good 5 or 6 books in my future. We'll see.
that's great. Well, I hope so because you're a good writer. So I enjoyed your book a lot. So where can people find your book and find you?
Well, I have my website, www.daveriese.com, R-I-E-S-E, and I have a Facebook account. You can Google Echo from Mount Royal, and you'll get a list of URLs to click on to try to do as much publicity as I can, and and just sort of have the courage to go out there and just say, I've written a book and I think it's good, and will you help me publicize it? Or will you help me promote it?
That's great. I think that's terrific. And, as a person who publishes authors like you who, have to get behind their books, it's really great to hear that, because some people are shy about it. And, you've got to get behind yourself and be proud of it. Because if you're
Yeah,
not behind it, no one's going to be behind it.
right. And it's hard because public relations isn't usually the primary characteristic of a writer. They
Right.
tend to like to be hidden away from people and not stick their necks out. So when you suddenly are in the position of having to do publicity, it can be kind of scary at first.
Oh,
But that's why I think it helps to connect with a company that helps self-published writers, because they can guide you and give you some uh, direction and encouragement.
well, it was a pleasure to work with you. And is there anything else that you want to say before we say goodbye?
Um, Not really. Just hopefully people will take an interest and look up the book. There's also 3 chapters on my website that people can read to see if it's a book that they might be interested in. And certainly, I'm very happy to hear from readers. So I'm looking forward to the future and see what
That's
happens.
great. That's wonderful. Well, Dave, you've been a great guest. Thanks so much for being on the Author Connection. And I want to thank everybody for watching. And again, this is the Author Connection, and we are part of Merrimack Media, and we're the voice of independent authors. You can check the website for more shows and more information on self-publishing. So again, I was here with Dave Riese. Read his book, The Echo from Mount Royale, and this is Jenny Hudson. See you next time.